Hello, my beautiful human. Today's episode is a combination of a freaking rant and a discussion. And maybe to set the intention, I'm going to actually read this quote first because it just hit home. Let's just dive in. Let me just read this quote. I literally haven't stopped thinking about this quote. Okay, it's a long one, but bear with me. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You playing small does not serve the world. This is my favorite part. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that others won't feel insecure around you. Shit. Oh my God. Oh, as we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Marianne Williamson. Marianne, like, girl, that was a good one. It's a much longer quote. I'll leave it in a show note, but lately I have been having this conversation, and the one thing that kept coming up is how we constantly feel like we have to shrink ourselves or show up more quote unquote relatable to make others feel comfortable. And there is nothing that infuriates me more than that. Feeling like we can't actually show up as ourselves because it's going to make someone feel uncomfortable. It's not going to help us build relatability. It's just like, oh, it makes me so mad. And sometimes I actually feel guilty when I'm getting dressed up in the morning, when I'm putting my makeup on, or when I just take care of myself, because it makes me feel like, am I too much? Am I being too much? And I don't know if you feel that way. Or on the flip side, maybe you feel like you have to show up as someone else. You have to get dressed up. You have to put makeup on to make someone else feel better, or to help you feel belonged and belonging. You know that I am an advocate for sharing your story, your lessons, and your struggles, hopefully so you can like build relatability with your community and you can teach someone something. But I also know that by sharing vulnerable things, it makes you more confident and it makes you just show up more. On the flip side, however, for the person that is receiving that story on the other side, this is for you and for us. Your worth is not dependent on external factors, people, clothes, cars. You should not need to see someone struggle or simply do anything so you can feel validated. Okay, so this episode is going to have two parts. One, this idea of having to shrink ourselves or not show up 110% or however we want to show up simply to make others feel comfortable. And on the flip side, the other part of this episode is going to be about us needing to see people fail, needing to see people struggle so we can feel good about ourselves. Like, what? No, that's not fair. It's not fair for us and it's not fair for the other person. And I know that humans prefer to see struggle to validate themselves versus seeing people succeed to feel inspired. Like, I 100%, that's why reality shows do so well. That's why I used to, like, back in the day, I used to do like vlogs on YouTube. And I remember there was one vlog that I like remotely touched on the fact that I was divorced. And that one got so many more views than the ones of me being like, I'm so happy. Look at me and Sebastian thriving. And it just made me realize that people, I hate generalizing it because I don't think it's everybody, but society and most people feel better, feel reassured, feel validated when they see other people struggle. And I wish that we were more inspired by people's success than we were by their struggles. And so to kick it off, I need us to stop needing to see people's failures to feel validated. I need us to stop needing to see people fail for us to feel validated. I need us to stop being upset when we see, or triggered when we see another woman succeed, when we see her quote unquote put together, when we see her put makeup on, get her clothes on, she's dressed up every day. Like, we need to stop allowing that be a reflection on us. It has nothing to do with us. If I put makeup on in the morning because that makes me feel good, that should not make you not feel good, right? And so it turns into this deeper meaning of, why is it triggering when we see someone succeed? Why is it triggering when we see someone quote unquote put together, in our opinion, right? And why do we need to feel validated by external factors? I feel like if we can get to the bottom line of that, then we will be so just like simply connected to who we are and how we want to show up. And that could be very uncomfortable, like, I know, but I feel like if we can just really understand why these things are the way they are in our head and in our heart, then we can figure out how we want to show up and actually do it. When I was saying in this quote by Marianne that I absolutely love is that there is nothing enlightening about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. Do you feel like that at times? Do you feel like when you are showing up, maybe you can't be 100% yourself because it's going to make someone feel intimidated, or it's going to make someone feel uncomfortable? So rather than wearing what you want to wear, rather than speaking up, rather than, having an opinion and sharing that, rather than showing your voice, using your voice, rather than being yourself, you find yourself maybe just like sinking in a little bit, shrinking yourself, trying to blend in. And at times we do that for so long that we actually forget who we are. We forget how to show up. We forget the things that make us us because we have spent years shrinking ourselves. When I was talking at Create and Cultivate, someone had raised their hand and they said, I'm really struggling to use my voice at work. I'm just terrified. I don't have the confidence. And when I started digging in deeper, when I started asking questions, I realized, and she realized, the reason why she felt that way was because there was one specific moment where she did share her opinions and use her voice, and she got shut down. She was told her opinion wasn't good enough. She was told that, oh, that's not a good idea. Maybe people were laughing and like really made her feel insecure, as though it wasn't enough, that it was a bad idea. And so that programmed in her head, oh my God, this was such a shitty feeling. I don't ever want to feel that again. So I'm not going to share my opinion. So the next time she had something to say, rather than saying it, she kept quiet. And the next time after that, it happened again and again and again and again. And now it's months and years later. And she's like, I can't use my voice. I am terrified. And it's because we didn't break the cycle early on. Same thing. I remember when I worked at Yahoo, and the first few months, I love getting dressed up. If you guys know me, like getting dressed up and like you putting makeup on and doing my hair is part of my self-care. Like it really helps me feel good. And I would do that. And I remember some coworkers would be like, Jesus, Marina, like you're so dressed up. Heels on a Tuesday. And I was like, like whatever, and laughed it off. And then the next day I was like, okay, I'll wear sneakers. Literally, like as I was looking, I'm like, okay, I will wear sneakers. Maybe this is a little too much for work. And little by little, I lost my sense of style. I lost how I wanted to show up. Similar in meetings. I raise my hand, I say something. Maybe it's not quote unquote the best idea, but it was my idea, right? Or my coworker's idea. And someone makes a comment that then triggers you. It then tells your brain, oh, that was uncomfortable, right? It makes you feel uncomfortable. So then you don't do it again. And so we need to break that cycle right when it happens. Literally right when it happens. This could be by saying, yeah, I really love getting dressed up. It's my form of self-care. And realizing that their comments are not a reflection on you. It's a reflection of them. It's about how they feel. It's how they view themselves. You do not need to shrink yourself or not use your voice or change who you are to make someone else feel comfortable. That is not your job. And so that was the first part of this quote that I really loved. And then on the flip side, I'm thinking of the other person on the other side, and I'm just wondering, why do people need to feel validated by external factors? Why do I need to see a woman not dressed up, not put together, share her failures so I could feel good about myself? Why am I more inspired when this CEO that I admire shares a video of her crying because she was struggling? Why am I oh, I feel good about that. Oh my God, I see myself more in that than when the CEO shares this massive win or a publication that she got. When I see that, I'm like, oh, I could never do that. Why? Why is that a thing for us? Have you ever thought about that? And I find myself, don't get me wrong, I find myself doing that all the time. I've been on both sides. I've been on that side where someone is like, oh, Marina, I remember my client before, when she started working with me, she was like, I asked about you because I felt like, oh, is this girl going to be a bitch? Is she actually nice? And I'm like, oh my God, well, what made you think that I wouldn't be nice? And she was like, it's just like you always look put together. And I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? Right? What does me being dressed up or putting makeup on have to do with my character? And I realized that obviously she wasn't the only one that felt that way. I've also felt intimidated when I see someone put together. I also feel intimidated when I see someone sharing their successes. Then when I see them fail or struggling, I'm like, whew, it gives me permission, which I like. That's the whole part of being vulnerable. It gives me permission to be okay with my struggles. But I just want us to also use the wins to give us permission to be amazing, to not need validation on external factors. And so I want to remind you, there is nothing, I keep saying this from this quote, there is nothing enlightening about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you, and that your worth is not dependent on external factors. It is not dependent on the money that you have. Your worth is not dependent on people. It's not dependent on the material things that you have. Your worth is not dependent on your accomplishments. Your worth is simply that, your worth. You are worthy because you are. You do not need anything else to validate that. You should not feel like you need someone's struggle to feel validated. You should be equally as inspired when you see someone winning. You should look at that and be like, hell yeah, I can do that too. Because guess what? You can. And you know how much I love community. And girl, we need to do this together. We are truly in this together. Because like I said, I have been on both sides. And so if we can catch ourselves doing it, when we see ourselves intimidated by something or someone, or when we see ourselves being validated by external factors, let's call ourselves out. Because if we keep doing that, the cycle will continue, and it will be harder and harder and harder for us to show up. And we deserve to freaking show up. We deserve to do all of the amazing things. And the last thing that I want to say is that this quote that I really loved is her last line that says, as we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. I'm telling you, Marianne killed it with this one. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Let's work on liberating one another. Let's work on supporting one another in feeling good as we are. Let's work on receiving compliments. Let's work on giving compliments. When someone is telling you you're too much, receive that and understand that that is not a reflection of you. It is a reflection of them, and you should support them in that. Sometimes when someone is like, oh, Marina, honestly, like you are always put together. Like it's so stressful for me. Or I could never. When I hear that, oh, Marina, I could never do what you're doing or always get ready like you do. I immediately find something that is so amazing about them and I compliment them on that to make them remember that they are amazing the way they are. It is not a reflection of me, and I want them to feel good about their reflection. I told you this episode is a combination of a rant and a discussion. And if you see the YouTube video of this, I had my arms flaring because I'm just so passionate about wanting to make sure that we are not shrinking ourselves, we are not shrinking one another, and that most importantly, we know that we are worthy simply because we are. You don't need anything else to validate that. I love you. I hope that this is a reminder that you are amazing, you're worthy, you are enough, and that the more that you can show up authentically, the more that you can use your voice, the more that you do not change for anyone or anything else, the more that that will automatically liberate someone else. Love you. I'll see you next week.